Is daytime partying more attractive than ever? And what happens with the money we may spend on cannabis products if prices allow us to shift toward drinking occasions? All that in a pivotal change in how Americans are living and buying food and drink. I'm Sightline's Director of Insights, Brian Roth, joined by lead analyst Kate Burnett for this episode of The Gist. And Kate, we're going to start with a review of some of the work that we did for Sightlines that is incredibly relevant right now as we're talking in November. The idea of how binge drinking is taking place amongst drinkers. We have one of the biggest on-premise days of the year coming up. That's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, as well as days around Christmas and New Year's. There are a lot of opportunities for companies to take advantage of the situation. And what we found, based on some research from CGA by NIQ, was in line with a lot of what we've reported on Sightlines over the course of the past 12 to 18 months, that people are shifting their attention to how they drink, especially when they drink.
Yes, this is a shift that I think we began tracking during the earlier years of the pandemic, the 2020, 2021 period. However, it has not abated. This pandemic influenced shift towards going out earlier in the day appears here to stay and potentially only to increase. I think there are a few reasons we can point to that. I think the nature of where people are drinking is changing. We see the data show, fewer visits to things like nightclubs, like these traditional late night destinations, and the rise of heavy drinking at places like brunch restaurants, at maybe experiential bars like barcades and indoor golf simulators, things like that, where that's just more of a daytime occasion, less of a 9 p.m. and onward kind of thing. I think we also need to loop in some data here on the popularity of happy hours as consumers are feeling the budgetary pinch still. Happy hours went from being maybe kind of a dusty relic to very relevant. We see here in the CGA data, cocktail sales increasing, huge increase in that daytime noon to 3 p.m. Those are up 28% since Q1 2024. Big decline of 9% from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So day drinking, maybe taking advantage of some happy hour deals, maybe shifting the binge drinking from late night to a more casual daytime brunch or lunch event with friends, or just an early dinner, maybe a 5 o'clock meetup rather than 8 o'clock. All of this is happening really, really strongly in the on-premise, and brands would do well to realize what that means in terms of what people are ordering, how much they're ordering, and where they're going.
Yeah, and I want to pinpoint on something you had mentioned just now too, Kate, and that's the word casual. If you are joining us on YouTube for this, you can see on your screen right now the data of where, or so rather when people are binge drinking, and it is occurring earlier in the day. Almost 60%. Say that they do binge drinking occasions between 5 and 8 p.m., 61% between 8 and 10 p.m. This is from CGA data. And then it's 33%. So it's about half of all of that is 10 p.m. and later. And the feeling that I get when we talk about these changes, Kate, is one that it's a word that comes to mind that we've shared a lot, that we say a lot, that is vibes. And the post-pandemic lifestyle in which there's obviously a lot more people working from home. We are not just drinking and going out to bars and tap rooms early in your day. This is across the board. There's just a more casual feeling to the way that we're thinking about how we're spending our time with our friends. In a lot of these occasions that used to be, oh, well, I'll meet you for 6 or 7 o'clock drinks. That is now the 4 or 5 o'clock drink. And it's happening in restaurants like Chili's, Applebee's, Cheesecake Factories, they're about a third of their daily traffic now is between 4 and 7 p.m. Kate, you had research in one of your posts for Sightlines. In market reported it was 25% of bar visitations occurred between 4 and 7 p.m. Brewers Association looking at Arrive data showed that things were trending about an earlier in the day from 8 to 7 p.m. It's just a lot of these occasions, it's not just the way that you're thinking about maybe how I'm spending my evening or maybe getting a little bit more sleep, but it's also just putting less pressure on you're not getting dressed up to go to the nightclub anymore, right? It's 8 p.m. You're going out to have dinner and a couple of drinks with your friends, and that's what feels good.
100%. I think the idea of lower pressure social occasions matches up with the daytime hours more strongly than those evening hours. Even this trend, by the way, is also occurring apparently in the UK, where even something like London's National Theatre, this is a very sort of formal, going out social space where you might have to dress up and all that. They are moving shows earlier in the day, piloting a 6:30 p.m. midweek performance. This is, traditionally the 8 or 9 p.m. like full dress cocktail attire kind of thing. I think just post-pandemic, people's appetite for that. We joked during the work from home years that like the idea of putting on real pants seemed insane anymore. And I think it did reset people's expectations of what a social occasion is and how much sort of pressure and effort we're willing to put on those occasions. We all just got used to maybe having more flexibility in our daytime to do those kinds of meetups. If you're going into the office, it's maybe hard to get with a commute to a friend for drinks before 6:30 or 7 o'clock. If you work from home and your schedule is slightly more flexible, maybe that 5:30 meetup is just a lot easier.
Yeah, the shift in how we choose to spend time is particularly meaningful as we are a bit more picky about the way that we do it too. Putting up a chart for those who are joining us on YouTube. Using data from the American Time Use Survey, we looked at age groups of ways that people are spending their time socializing, attending or hosting social events. And then we looked at the change over the course of 2019 as the pre-pandemic, and then 2023, the most recent year of data, as the post-pandemic. And the changes are pretty stark. It was kind of flat in terms of looking at all ages, but 15 to 24 down, 25 to 34 down. And now, these aren't huge. We're not talking hours of change, but it does put an emphasis on what, Kate, you and I have looked at as implications for these kinds of time of day changes, that people are being more picky about when, why, and how they go out. And as we're thinking about something like, okay, so binge drinking is now taking place a little bit earlier in the day. For states where happy hour is legal, that's certainly a big plus. But this also puts a lot more emphasis on what it means to have activations or programming or events, not just earlier in the day more broadly, but also trying to fit these moments in time with the kind of events that feel really exciting, that give people a reason to go out in the first place.
I think about product mix too. I mean, what I would choose at 1 p.m. for a drink is maybe very different than what I would choose at 9 p.m. I think there are huge opportunities for certain product categories that fit the daytime. If I'm a Prosecco company, I might feel really good about this shift. If I'm a purveyor of late night shots, maybe this feels not quite like good news to me. But thinking about how that product assortment, the way those are positioned, what people want from that daytime part, I think has massive implications for brands. And I've yet to see major brands like fully, I think, address this in an explicit way. And I kind of would love to. I would love to see brands like really go after this day part in a huge way.
After a year in which there is plenty of narrative to point out that suggests a bad time for something like beer and seltzer, this really feels like a good opportunity for smart companies to take advantage of this situation because those are generally lower ABV products, especially in the on-premise that people are seeking. And it gives this maybe now more spoken, explicit invitation that this is what people are doing. This is what consumer behavior is already tracking. So all you have to do is just join and offer up what you have already as part of the behavior they're a part of.
Sure.
Um,
One more White Claw with lunch. Why
Black cherry around for everybody, please.
not?
Which raises the question, Kate, what happens if people have more money to spend on alcohol? This is a question that was broadly posed by Bart Watson. He's the vice president of strategy and chief economist for the Brewers Association. He had a recent post on the Brewers Association website that aligned with a lot of the research that we have done at Sightlines over the course of the last year or two, focusing on this intersection between alcohol consumption and cannabis use. And a big question that Bart kind of circles is, a lot of people want to know, okay, is cannabis stealing sales from beer? The research that we've done at this moment suggests that this is not the case. It just doesn't happen whether recreational cannabis is legal, medical marijuana is legal, all of that. But if marijuana prices go down, so if cannabis prices go down in dispensaries, does that mean that that extra money that a consumer was spending in that dispensary, if they have an extra $10, for example, we already know cannabis consumers are more likely to buy alcohol than non-users. Does that then start going to alcohol? And it offers up, a important situation, something very keen to consider, that as cannabis and THC products are becoming more legal, just the fact that people are more price conscious and perhaps spending less on that segment, all of a sudden starts to open up opportunities elsewhere.
Show me another consumer packaged good where prices are falling and falling dramatically. It's a fascinating sector to look at. So let's take a state like Colorado, one of the earliest states to legalize recreational cannabis. We have seen the average price per gram of flower, of cannabis flower in Colorado, drop from almost 15% when it was first legalized in 2015 to under $5 now, right around $4. That is a dramatic change. And obviously, those prices were very high when it was first legalized in 2015. But even by 2017, we were still looking at, I don't know, $7 a gram. Like that price has come down significantly since legalization happened. We're seeing this in the hemp beverage space, downward pricing pressure as so many more brands are getting into hemp beverages, and as they're becoming available in mainstream retail, retailers, consumers would really like to see those prices come down, and they are. So if these prices are, really coming more into line with alcohol, I think there's an open question of whether that creates more volume sales for those products or whether that frees up people already getting what they want. It frees up room in their budget. Now they can spend that on other indulgences, social indulgences like alcohol.
There was a great chart that Bart shared that you can see on your screen right now. Kate, you shared the price per gram for flour. This is another way to think about it too. It's minutes work to buy a gram. This is in the state of Oregon, which in October of 2016 was about 25 minutes in order to afford that gram by, just kind of averaged salaries. It's now about 6 minutes in order to achieve to buy a gram. So, the prices are going down. The effort to earn the money is shifting dramatically too. And, I really want to hit on the middle of this Venn diagram, which is something, Kate, that you have done a lot in the insights you've shared at Sightlines, where on one side, there are alcohol users. On the other side, there are going to be cannabis users. And there's a very large overlap in between. And so there is an aspect of novelty, obviously, in states where, say, a hemp-derived THC beverage that exists in a retail store near beer, it is new, it is different, and for a lot of people that can be attractive. But once that becomes part of the routine and it becomes something that is more normalized, all of a sudden that contrast of novelty between, one shelf an arm's length away has the IPA that you love, another one an arm's length away has 5 milligram THC seltzer that you like too. As price becomes more close to parity between these two and habits form in which we already know a consumer will choose both of these, there is, again, as we emphasize, like there's grand opportunity for all of this to exist in the same space, because more often than not, we're seeing the growth of consumers who are in fact choosing from these two sectors.
I think that's what we're going to see. This is just going to be people swapping alcohol and THC, the way they always have. Let us not forget that
Yes.
despite, an illegal status, it's not as though people haven't had access to this product. But I think people are just going to switch between them the way we switch between beer and wine and spirits. It'll just be another product in the mix. I attended a friend's birthday party a couple weekends ago. It was a bunch of us all staying in a cabin. The host announced there was a fridge for alcoholic beverages, there was a fridge for non-alcoholic beverages, and there was a mini fridge for THC beverages. And everyone at the party knew which was which, and pick your poison, as it were. And I think that is what we will see normalize going forward, is that this is just another option in the mix that is priced more comparatively, and what people do with that price parity will be really interesting to see, because cannabis will no longer be this novel and extremely expensive indulgence vis-a-vis alcohol. It'll be more of just another option in the fridge or mini fridge.
And lest you think that it's solely young people who are causing this change, we can add some context. This is one of the things we love to do with Sightlines. If you are with us on YouTube, on the screen right now, you see the beverage alcohol expenditure. That's how much people are spending on alcohol by head of household age. And there was a line for under 25 that just drops off considerably between 1994 to 2004 to 2014 and beyond. Now, one way to read this is that since 2014, there have been a lot of states that have legalized cannabis, recreational cannabis, and so younger people who are more prone to use it may be switching in and out. But Kate, one thing that you and I have learned, and if you are a Sightline subscriber, you will get an in-depth report on this, is that the changing composition of households, as we see the drop-off in under 25 spending on alcohol, is heavily influenced by the fact there are just fewer under 25 households that exist right now in America. And why does that matter? Well, as household compositions change, more families are moving into multi-generational homes. So much so that this is going to have profound impacts on the way that people are discovering food and drink, buying food and drink. And Kate, we just happen to have a big multi-part series right now on Sightlines that you've been working on for some time. Just high level, why is this so important for people to consider, the way that homes are changing and we're finding, those under 25 households are now shifting into households led by people, twice that age?
This has huge implications for all CPG, but I mean, definitely for beverages. I think just think about your own self, listener out there. Think about what your household food and beverage purchases would look like if you lived alone. What would you buy if you only grocery shopped for yourself? Now, imagine you live in a household with children. You also live in a household with your parents, or perhaps an aging aunt or uncle. Maybe there's even a roommate who's helping pay rent in there. your shopping trip is dramatically different. Maybe even the stores you go to are dramatically different. Quantities you purchase, budgeting, everything changes when you're shopping for these larger household sizes. So I think coming at that from the lens of a beverage brand and what does that mean for their consumers, this is especially important again for those young people who are, really important demographics for beverage brands. We also know that Hispanic Latino households are much more likely to be comprised of multiple generations compared to other racial and ethnic groups. Those are another growing critical alcohol consumption demographic. Some of the most important consumers of alcohol live in increasingly multi-generational homes that are shaping the way they shop, eat, and drink.
The National Association of Realtors mid-November released their annual report where a lot of the data that we're citing is coming from. This is something of a generational shift in which we have multi-generational households becoming a larger part of American life. And, Kate, when we think about, younger people moving in with their parents or grandparents, we have a lot of families in which it is grandparents moving in with their children as they need additional care and help. That, the discovery aspect of this and what it means for beverage brands is huge. You spoke with people who are discovering non-alcoholic beer for the first time, who are finding opportunities to try wine in different ways or different kinds of wine for the first time in which they might not, because it's not just, a younger person or a member of the family that's introducing them. But to your point, it's also a matter of sharing a budget and sharing a bottle. That if we have an 80-year-old who loves the idea of trying to have an alcoholic drink at the end of a day, but they certainly cannot splurge on a bottle because that's just way too much of them, all of a sudden the dynamics of what this means for CPG is huge.
Right. And I think this is really multi-directional as well. It's not, certainly it's a lot of younger members of a household introducing older members of household to new flavors, new brands, new products. But this works the other way too. Older generations, we know, have a lot of purchasing power today. Boomers still a massive, the most important alcohol purchasing demographic in terms of just dollar spend. So their priorities matter too, right? In the way they want to spend their money. Also, in CPG, there's academic research to show that for certain categories, the brands that your parents and grandparents use that you grew up using, those are sticky. You might still use those same brands years, decades later. So this is not a one directional who influences who. It's a lot of priorities, being shared between generations, a lot more communication between generations about spending, about preferences, about formats. And so there's not some neat answer to, oh, this is what happens as a result of this. I think it's just really important for brands to, and even retailers, to have this on their radar as a massive new factor in consumer behavior and shopping priorities.
One thing that we always like to highlight for the work that we do on Sightlines is you cannot think about consumer groups as a single monolith, especially today, this being a key change of what's happening. And we have loads of information about the implications of multi-generational households over on sightlines.news. That's going to be it for this episode of The Gist. If you want more in-depth analysis and actionable insights, you can join us at sightlines.news, where subscribers get weekly updates delivered to their inbox. Until next time, I'm Brian Roth with Kate Bernat.